We are live. We are live. We're live right now. We are live. So the live is supposed to start at 6:30. So we'll just wait a little bit until 6:30, and yeah, go from there. Okay. 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 We are live. We are live. We are live. So bear with me, everyone. This is my first time going on live on YouTube, so I'm still trying to navigate the entire setup. And yeah, but yeah, we are live. We are live right now, chat. Yeah, just wait more. Yeah, we got one person in the chat. Hello, Chris. Okay. Okay, yeah. So we're just gonna dive right into it. So before we start, let's start off with a word of prayer, because we need to start things right. So let's start off with a word of prayer. So, Lord, thank you for your grace and your mercy. Thank you for your goodness, your guidance, and your protection. Thank you, Lord, because your favor is on our lives. And as we're about to learn about finance, open our eyes to see and understand and to improve our lives the way that you intend us to improve them. And also help us to become better steward of the money that you've been able to give us. Thank you, Lord, for your grace and your mercies. For in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So, that being said, I'm gonna give so I have like a whole bunch of bullet point lists. So I'm gonna be going through the things that I have currently on my list. So if you see me looking down if you see me looking down on a paper, it's because I prepared a whole bunch of different things. So who do we have right now in the chat? So for those just joining in, like I said earlier, this is my first time. This is my first time navigating YouTube Live. So please bear with me, and yeah, we'll go from here. Hmm. Yeah. Okay. So a quick introduction of who I am. So my name is Living, and I am a money coach, and Um, personally, I've not always been good with my finances. I have been someone that I had relatively good upbringing. Pops, my dad always taught me how to save. But the one thing that I always had struggles with and I had issues with was navigating my emotional relationship when it came to money. I did not really have the best emotional relationship with money, and it really affected me on so many levels. But it wasn't until eventually I was able to find someone, a mentor, that was able to teach me and grow me into the person that I am currently, in a place where I don't feel anxious when money conversations come up. Because there was a time where I was literally on the bus, right? I was at the back of the bus, and I was so scared to open up my bank app. Like, I talk about this story so often, like so much, to the point that at this point, if you know me, then you know the story. I was so scared to open up my bank app. Like, I was gripped with so much anxiety, and it was like I was so surprised. What's going on? Okay, shout out to Sharon, shout out to Blake, shout out to Chris in the chat. Blake said, "Can I tell you something sad?" What's sad? What's going on, Blake? Yeah, but yeah, I was gripped with so much anxiety when it came to my finances, and it it was a struggle that I had. And at that moment, when I was at the back of the bus, that was the moment that I realized that I need to change, that something needs to change. Blake says, I'm poor, my dad is dead, and I'm living with my grandparents. I'm black and people are being mean. Sorry for your loss, Blake. And living with your parents. I'm black and people are being mean. Hey people, stop being mean to Blake. Blake seems like a nice guy. Stop being mean to Blake. So hello hello Irene. Hi Irene. Hi Sherry. So hello everyone in the chat. So yeah, so that was a little backstory about me. And I was going through all this emotional turmoil when my finances, topic of my finances, came up. And yeah, eventually I just realized that something needs to change. So I took the steps required to change that. So that meant me going out to look for a mentor. That meant me, paying for programs to help me, improve myself. And yeah, hi Isaac, hi Isaac, Isaac Dubs, random stuffs. Hello. So yeah, so that's essentially what happened, right? And that eventually built me up into the person that I am currently, where I no longer have that the emotional struggles that I previously had when it came to my finances. So that's a little bit of a backstory about me. So like I said earlier on when I started this whole conversation, I have a whole bunch of lists, different things that I prepared for this live. So if you see me looking down, it's just because I'm just looking at my list. So yeah. And yeah, so the what we're going to be talking about today is the basics of finance, right? And um we're going to be talking about we're going to be touching on little things when it comes to personal finance. We're going to be talking about the mindset. We're going to be talking about budgeting. We're going to be talking about saving and investing. And as the life keeps on going, if you have any questions, any things that you want to ask me, make sure to put that in the chat, and I'll make sure I'm able to get to it. Oh, Sharon says I really need tips on budgeting. Okay, yes, we're gonna get to that in a bit. So yeah, so we're gonna get to that. So Sharon says she really needs tips on budgeting and yeah, Ryan. Yeah, Ryan, I know. Okay. Ryan says, yes, please teach me. Okay, no problem. Yeah, we're gonna get to that. Okay. So the very first thing that we need to cover is we need to cover the mindset. We need to cover the basics of money, and the basics of improving your finances is understanding that it is mindset mindset and your habits. Your mindset and your habits play a big role when it comes to your finances and improving yourself, and improving your relationship with money, right? The place that you want to get to is crazy, because I was in this exact same place. The place that you want to get to, which is here, I'm gonna go back. The place you want to get to, which is here, and the place that you are right now, the gap in between that. Can you see my head? So I'm in between the middle. So my head, the mindset, the gap between the place that you want to get to and the place that you are currently is a shift in the way you think. A lot of people, the way that they were brought up, their philosophy about money has been warped, from their family, their parents, the the father figure or the mother figure in their lives have basically altered the way they think about money. So you would often find people that would say things like, "I'm so bad with my finances, and I can never, improve myself financially." And they would often say things like, "I will always be broke." If you've met people like that in the chat, if you've met people like that, let me know in the chat. Let me know if you've met people that are always negative, when it comes to their finances. Let me know that. So, yeah, your mindset is super important. There's no way. Ryan says, "Yep, 100%." Yeah. So there's no way you're going to be able to get to that place that you want to get to if your mindset, if the way you think about money doesn't change, right? So that's super important, right? A lot of people have a scarcity thinking mindset as compared and not a growth mindset. A lot of people, like, let's talk about the topic of investing. A lot of people are like, I do not have enough money to start investing. Have you heard people say that? A lot of people say things like, I don't have enough money to start investing. um like I don't have enough money at the end of the week, and they're so focused on what they don't have rather than being focused on what they do have, right? You should be focused on what do you currently have. You have a job, right? If you have a job, then you have a job. You have a paycheck that comes in, right? Which is good. You have a paycheck. You have control. You actually do have control over your money. A lot of people think that they don't have control over their finances. Chris, what did Chris say? Chris, I always say I don't have money to go to church, but the next day I spend that same money on random stuff. Crazy. I think it's just priorities. Yeah, that's so funny. But it's true. We often say things like we don't have enough money to do something that will actively improve our lives, but for some weird reason, you have money for Uber Eats. You have money for Uber Eats. You have money to go out and drink with your buddies at night. You have money to go buy, to go buy weed. Like there's money when you want to do things that don't move you forward, but for some reason there's no money when you want to do things that move you forward, right? And this is no shade to anyone. This is just like basically how most human beings are on a day-to-day basis. Ryan says, "Yeah, isn't that the truth?" Yeah, Ryan, exactly. So, and the key point is we need to improve our mindset from a place of scarcity to a place of abundance. Change the way you think, and it's going to take some time. It's not something that just happens. Chris says, "The weed comment hit me." LOL. Yeah. So it's not something that just happens overnight. It's something that you have to do consistently. For example, for me, I had that scarcity mindset growing up. I had that scarcity mindset of, I don't think I'm going to have enough money to do certain things. So my resolve for that mindset was to constantly save. So saving was my resolve for that mindset. And not knowing and not understanding that the purpose behind money is to enable me acquire the things that will improve my life. But I would see the things that I really wanted. Like, let's say I wanted to get a course, or I wanted to enroll for a class, or even get nice things like clothes, or shoes. I would feel so bad getting those things, right? Because I had a scarcity thinking. I had a scarcity thinking and a scarcity mindset. Ryan says, "Be right back, bro." I no problem. Yeah, the live is being recorded. So if there's anything that you missed out on, you can always refer back to the live. So yeah, exactly. So that's what was going on with me, and it's important. It's going to take some time. So what I actively did was I would actively talk to myself. I would talk to myself in the mirror. I would, write affirmations for myself on a day-to-day basis, and these are things that I kept on saying to myself. I would tell myself that things like, I'm amazing with my finances. I think from a place of growth. I'm not scarce. I'm not limited. Money multiplies in my hands. Things of that nature, right? So that's what I would tell myself. And over time, because I told myself these things so much, it reflected to my actions. I started watching more content when it came to finance. I started, you know, I started going for coaching when it came to my finances. I started learning, I started reading books, so it's going to take time, but the more you tell yourself these things, eventually it jerks you up to do the things that you need to do to get you to the place that you want to get to. So for example, let me give a simple example. For those of you that work a 9 to 5, or let's say you don't um, work a 9 to 5, um, yeah, but it's just a general example though. So let's say you wake up in the morning, what do you tell yourself? You have a 9 to 5 job. The inclination in your head is, I need to go to work. So because you need to go to work, you actively said you needed to go to work. Then, as a result of you speaking, it inevitably jerked you up so that you could go take a shower, so that you could, go make breakfast, so that you could do your day to day routines, the things that you need to do, so that you could eventually get to work. So, in that example, you see how your words eventually reflected into your actions. So, those are the key points, certain things that you can actually start doing. And uh, also when it comes to money, you can't manage what you don't understand, right? You can't manage what you don't understand. So that is why I emphasize, listening to people that are good with their finances. If you want to learn about money and you're not subscribed to this channel, subscribe to the channel right now. I talk about money. I make videos like, every month, bi-weekly, every month. So read more books. Your friend group is super important. If you have a friend group of people that are not financially inclined, people that don't like to talk about finances, people that don't care about money in any way, shape, or form, is going to affect the way you will think. So your friends affect you. So the circle of people that you surround yourself with can also affect that mindset and that growth that you need to get to the place that you want to get to. If you're someone that you're constantly on TikTok, TikTok, this is a TikTok generation, so you can actually train your algorithm so that it fills you up with content about finance, to get so that you can start thinking from a place of abundance, and start thinking from a place of possibilities, right? So now, Sharon had asked earlier. Let's see if we can go back to what Sharon said. Okay, Sharon said, "I really need tips on budgeting." And this is a really good question, because if you came from IG, from Instagram, I posted a question a while back, and I asked people, what is the number one thing that you guys are struggling with currently with your finances? And what one person said was, budgeting feels like a nightmare, and they feel like they could never get ahead when it comes to budgeting. And the reason why it feels that way for that person is because they they're not aligning their finances to their actual lifestyle, right? They're not aligning their finances to their actual lifestyle. Um, when you go online, there are so many rules that you can follow. There's the 60 10 20 rule. There's the five. There's the also the 530 50 30 20 rule, and all these rules are just basically like, for example, the 50 30 20 rule is 50% of your money goes into fixed cost, 30% of your money goes into your your wants, and lies like vacation, things that you want to buy like clothes, eating out, and then 20% goes into savings and investments. Now, the reason why budgeting can feel like is a struggle for you is because you're trying to fit your lifestyle into another person's rule. It's like you're trying to fit your lifestyle into the 50 30 20 rule, when in fact, you don't really need the 50 30 20 rule. What you need is maybe you need a 70 10 20 rule, or maybe you need a 60-30-10 rule, right? It's called personal finance for a reason. It's called personal finance because it is personal. Every single person's financial journey are completely different. You know, every single person's financial journey are completely different. And it's all based on what do you have? What do you have currently? So if you want to get better with budgeting, you need to start breaking things down. Okay, what are my fixed costs? What are the things, what are my wants? What are the things that I like to do? Okay, how much do I want to save? How much do I want to invest? You know, what are the things I care about? Do I care about traveling? Do I care about clothes? Do I care about eating out? Like for me personally, I'm going to use myself as an example. When it came to my finances, the things that I really cared about the most were clothes. Most of you that don't know, now you will know. I care about fashion a lot, so I cared about clothes, and I also cared about saving and investing long term, right? So when it came to my finances, I made sure that I filled the holes that I really wanted to fill, right? I filled those holes that I really wanted to fill so that budgeting doesn't feel like a burden, right? I align myself with what I actually want versus I gear towards what I actually want for myself as opposed to what everyone tells me that I should want. You know, everyone says, okay, do this. Everyone says, do that. But at the end of the day, you're the only person that is going to live out that life, right? That's why it's called personal finance. And the reason why it's also challenging for a lot of people when it comes to budgeting is a lot of people, this is why I say is a mindset issue. A lot of people compare themselves with other people. A lot of people compare themselves with other people. And, you know, I personally have gone through that. When you would go on Instagram, you would go on TikTok, you would see people randomly doing interviews and asking people, in their 20s and 30s, how much do you have saved in your bank account? And then I would see people my age. If you guys don't know, I'm 27. I would see people my age, and they would say, oh, they have like, $50,000 saved, $30,000 saved, $100,000 saved, and all these things eventually, would make you feel like you're not doing enough, or you're not adequate when it comes to your finances. But that's not true. A lot of people, we see the end result of another person, but we don't see the process that it took for them to get there. Like, you don't know if that person has a business. You do not know if that person's family comes from wealth. You do not know if, is a trust fund kid. You don't know these things about these people. So you can't basically base your life off another person's lifestyle, right? If you do that, that is a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for financial disaster. You can't do that. What you can do is, the positive that you can gain out of that is, oh, this person is 27, this person is 30, they have this amount of money saved and invested. Oh, wow, if they can do it, then I can do it too. But if you're coming from a place of comparison, then it's going to be a big, 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 big problem. So, so tactical steps that you can take, for people that have issue with budgeting, tactical steps that you can take is, track your expenses. Track your expenses. Um, Now, there are a lot of people that, are so into the spreadsheets. They're so into um every single thing that they have. All the money that they spend, they're so key into that. And there are others that just doing that can already feel so overwhelming. Like, if they're trying to track every single thing, like, you go grocery shopping and yada yada yada, you pay for this, you pay for that, and then tracking every single thing can feel so overwhelming, right? Not every single person is a spreadsheet person, right? But the good thing to always have is a foundation. Let's say you get paid. By the way, as I'm talking, if you guys have questions, you can always cut me off, put the question in the chat, and I'll get to that as well. So let's say you make $3,000 a month, right? And you care about, traveling, you care about eating out, you care about saving and investing, you care about, all these little things, right? But you make $3,000 a month. What you want to do is, okay, have have an idea of how much do I how much do I pay in fixed costs, right? Mr. Jelly God. Hello, Mr. Jelly God. That was a really funny name, Mr. Jelly God. Shout out to Mr. Jelly God. Anyway, so what you would do is, how much do I have in how much do I have how much is my fixed cost, right? So how much am I paying in rent? How much am I paying for mortgage? How much am I paying in utilities? The things that you have to constantly pay every month. So you're gonna have that down, and then you're also gonna put into what do I spend when it comes to what do I want to spend when it comes to vacations, when it comes to going out, when it comes to doing things that I actually like. Let's say you like traveling. How much would I want to spend in that? And also, how much do I want to spend in how much do I want to save, and how much do I want to invest? Now what you are going to do is you're going to have all these things listed out, and you're going to follow this next rule. Once you have all these things listed out, you're going to follow this next rule. Spend less on the things that you don't like, and spend more on the things that you do like. I'll say that again. I don't think a lot of people talk about this. It's spend less on the things that you do not like, and spend more on the things that you do like. There are so many people that have TV subscriptions, um internet subscriptions, Netflix, what other subscriptions can be named, CapCut, video editing subscriptions, gym memberships, gym memberships, um golf golfing membership, all these different memberships. They have all these things, and they don't use them. You have them, and you Spotify subscriptions. Shout out to Chris. Spotify subscriptions. You have all these things, but you don't use them. So why are you paying for things that you do not use? You have gotten so accustomed to paying for them that it just seems like a norm now, right? Where in fact, these things, they might seem small, but over the long term, they could cost thousands of dollars, like over the year. you know a $10 subscription every month, at the end of the year, that's $120. That $120 could have been used to do things that you actually like. So spend less on the things that you do not like, and spend more on the things that you do like. And that can be the casing, that can be the casing for for your for your for your for your what's the word, that can be the casing for your spreadsheets, right? So you have your fixed cost, then you have your needs, you have your fixed cost, then you have your wants, and then you have your investing for your long term. But spending less on the things that you don't like, and spending more on the things that you do like, can be the casing. So let me give an example with myself. I think examples are the best way to explain this type of things. So I was I was paying for internet subscriptions, and I was paying about close to $100 for my internet subscription, and I kept doing this, but I realized that I don't watch TV a lot, because most of the time people use internet just to sorry about that. Most of the time, people, they have internet services so that they can go on YouTube, so that they can, watch Netflix, and go on Instagram, TikTok. But I realized that I don't watch TV a lot, and I live alone. So why am I paying $100 for an internet subscription, right? So what I did was I called up the subscription companies and I told them, hey guys, like, I do not want this anymore. This is too high. I need to cut back on my expenses. And lo and behold, they eventually gave me a service that was $50, and the internet speed has still been good, right? One thing that you should notice, all these subscription companies, they work for you. The moment you purchase their services, they are obligated to give you a service that fits your lifestyle, right? A lot of them will try to sell you things, here and there, but they are obligated to give you a service that fits your lifestyle, and you can always change these services. Now, I was able to stop paying $100 a month and I started paying $50 a month. And the other $50, I was able to use it on things I actually like. I was able to, use $20 to go out to eat, go out to eat with friends, you know, just do things that I like. I could use some money to go thrifting. I could also use, some money to increase the amount of money that I would invest into the stock market, right? And it might seem like it's not a lot, but over time, because of the power of compounding, um, even $50 can increase your net income and your wealth building strategy over the long term, right? So that's super important. Now let's go over to saving and investing, right? Um, Saving and emergency funds. So we're going to talk about savings and emergency funds right now. Before you're able to invest, you're going to need an emergency fund. A lot of people go into investing without having a backup, right? And that can be a really, really big mistake. That can be a really, really big mistake. There are so many people that start investing into the stock market, and because they don't have a backup, life happens. Life happens. Your car could crash, your car could break down. You could, you know, an emergency hospital bill, you know, things of this nature. We live on earth, things are always going to happen. So you need something that can stop you from dipping into your investments. People don't understand the importance of an emergency fund until an emergency happens, and then they realize that they really don't have any emergency, and they really don't have any money saved up, right? So an emergency fund ideally should be between 3 to 6 months of your bare bones expenses. I'll repeat that: an emergency fund should be ideally between 3 to 6 months of your bare bones expenses. That is 3 to 6 months of things that you cannot live without. I'm not talking about going out to eat. I'm not talking about, buying clothes, vacations. No, I'm talking about your basics: rent or mortgage, a car payment, utilities, gas, hydro, things of that nature, and groceries. Your emergency fund should be between 3 to 6 months of your bare bones expenses, right? And there are no limits to this, right? It could be 8 months, it could be up to 12 months, depending on what you're comfortable with. And I'm of the opinion that you don't need to build up an emergency fund first before you start investing. Now, it's personal finance because it's personal. I personally, I don't believe that you need to wait to build up your emergency fund first before you start investing. I believe that you can do both simultaneously. Like for me to when I was trying to build up my emergency fund. Now, this is just free game that I'm giving it to you guys. The things that I did to actually build up my emergency fund. What I did was I took old items that I had and old items from friends, and I sold those. Right, I sold those online. I just went up to their house. I'm like, yo, yo, bro, do you have any things laying around in your house? I can come help you pick it up. I could come help you take that and toss it out. But I took that all. I took all those items, and then I listed them on Kijiji. I listed those on Facebook Marketplace. I listed those on eBay. You know, I listed them every single place I could possibly list them. And eventually people came and started buying. And I used that money to build up my emergency fund. Right. So I'm of the belief that you can do both simultaneously. There is no one specific way to actually build up your emergency fund, right? You can decide to build up your emergency fund first before you start investing, or you can decide to do both simultaneously, and that works perfectly as well. That works perfectly as well. Um, so let's talk about investing. Let's talk about investing. Let's talk about investing. If you guys have any questions, put them down in the chat as well. Any questions, any contributions, put them down in the chat. Put them down in the chat. So let's talk about investing. So, what is investing? Investing is allocating your finances into a system that creates you more money over time. Investing means allocating your finances into a system that creates you more money over time with minimal effort and minimal work, right? I'll repeat that again. Investing is allocating your finances into a system that creates more money over time with minimal efforts and minimal work, right? Now there are multiple there are different types of investing. There are people that do active investing and there are people that do passive investing. Past active investing, you're constantly checking the market. Things like day trading. That's active investing. Um, and then there's long-term investing. That includes things like investing in stocks, investing in ETFs, investing in real estate, things of that nature. So you have short active and then you have passive. Now, depending on the type of personality that you have, you could either choose an active investing style or a passive investing style. Now, for most people, I would always recommend the passive investing route because a lot of people are emotional. A lot of people are emotional. A lot of people are emotional. When it comes to money, a lot of people are emotional. Your emotions can make you make terrible decisions when it comes to your finances. A lot of people are so emotional to the point where they take on an active investing lifestyle and just lose all their money because they don't know when to back out. So for me personally, I would recommend that 90% of people in the world don't need to go through the active investing route. You can go through the passive investing route and make millions and make billions depending on how much you put into the system. For example, Warren Buffett. Most people know Warren Buffett. If you do not know Warren Buffett, when Warren Buffett is considered to be one of the greatest investors of all time, of our current time, right? And he went from literally having millions to billions, and he did this in the stock market. And it was over a span of 20, 30, 40 years. He made 90% of his wealth through long-term investing. And there's something important that he said. He said that when he dies, that his estate, 95% of his estate should be put into the S&P 500. So that was a whole mouthful. So I'm going to break things down. So he basically said that 95% of his estate should be put into a long-term investment strategy. The S&P 500 is essentially an index that tracks the top 500 companies in the US. You've probably heard about it, but if you haven't, now you know. So the S&P 500 is an index that tracks the top 500 companies in the US. Now, the good thing about the index is if there is a company that isn't performing up to standard, that company gets kicked out and replaced with another company that is doing better. So Warren Buffett suggests that if when he passes, this is what he would do. This is what the estate, this is how his money should be allocated. And I'm of the opinion that every single person that isn't emotionally controlled should have a long-term investment strategy, right? So that is super important. Now, when it comes to investing, the most important thing when it comes to investing is time. It's time. There are so many people that when they start investing, they want to make as much money as possible. Like they believe that the moment they put money in, like when I wake up, I should see $10,000 in the bank. They believe that if I put $1 into the stock market, I better become a millionaire when I wake up. That's the way a lot of people think. A lot of people have that lottery thinking mindset. I want to win the lottery. A lot of people have that lottery thinking mindset, and they don't know it, right? If you want to make quick money, there are ways to do that. If you want to make wealth, investing is the way to do that. I'll repeat this. If you want to make quick money, you want to make quick cash, $1,000, $2,000, even $10,000, there are ways to do that, you know. But if you want to make wealth, investing is the way you do that. Investing is the way you create wealth. Wealth that exists after you. Wealth that, your kids, your your kids, the people that you love, your loved ones, can actually enjoy from, right? So investing is the way to do that. Now, when it comes to investing, there are a few things that we can touch on. We're going to talk about the basics of the stock market. So first of all, what's the stock market? The stock market is essentially a place where people buy and sell stocks. And what is a stock? A stock is a piece or part ownership of a company. So when you buy a stock, you're essentially becoming a part owner of a company. So let's say I you know I'm interested in investing in Apple. The moment I buy a stock of Apple, I become part owner of that company. So that means whatever profits that Apple I make. Whatever losses that Apple makes, I make as well, because I'm a part owner of the company. Now, you can't just walk into a random place and say that you want to invest. You can't just walk into Apple and say that you want to invest into Apple. At least not for the, everyday person. So that is where a broker comes in. So what is a broker? A broker, Broker. Can we get some brokers in the chat? Brokers in the chat, brokers in the chat. So Broker. So that's a broker. So a broker is essentially an organization or a person that allows you to gain access to the stock market. What is a broker? A broker is essentially a person or an organization that allows you gain access into the stock market, right? So a broker allows you gain access into the stock market. And now in brokers, they have multiple accounts. You have your TFSA, you have your Roth IRA, you have your RRSP, you have your ISA, all these different accounts depending on the country that you reside in. Hey guys, one sec. Let me get some water. And I've been talking a lot. So yeah. So depending on the country that you currently reside in, there's so many brokers out there, right? That you can choose from, and so many accounts within those brokers, right? So you have your TF. Like I currently reside in Canada, so the accounts that we have within different brokers are the TFSA, and then you have your RRSP, and then you have your um, those are the two main accounts, the TFSA and the RRSP. And the broker that I personally use is Wealth because there are no fees attached to that when investing using Wealth, right? So what is a TFSA? A TFSA is a tax-free savings account, which means that whatever money that you put into that account cannot be taxed by the government. And what is your RRSP? Your RRSP is a tax deferred account, which means that whatever money you put into that account is tax deferred and it is deductible from your yearly income. So let's say you make $5,000 a year and you put $1,000 into that account. The government records that that year you made only $4,000. And what does that mean? That means that they overestimated how much you would actually earn, and that means they taxed you more than you actually earned. So the following year you get a huge chunk and change in tax returns, right? So is a tax deferred account, the RRSP, and the TFSA is a tax sheltered account. And one thing that you need to note is compounding is your best friend. Compounding, I think I can't remember the investor's name that said that compounding is the eighth is the is it the eighth wonder of the world, right? So, but yeah, compounding is your best friend. Compounding can generate so much wealth over time, but it requires number one time and it requires consistency. Requires time and requires consistency. So I'll just post a question to the chat. Does anyone uh feel that they want to start investing but they feel overwhelmed with that? Anyone in the chat? Anyone in the chat have ever wanted to start investing but you feel overwhelmed, or you feel like you don't know where to start from, or you feel like you don't know where to go? If you're out there in the chat, and you haven't put down a comment yet, the most common mistakes that people make with investing is they feel like they need to have a lot of money to do it. A lot of people feel like, they don't have all the information that they need to do it. You know, like investing is like any other thing in life. You're not going to know everything until you start. You're not going to know everything until you start. Until you start, you're not going to know what you don't know. And a lot of people are scared to start investing because they don't want to make mistakes. There's nothing that you do in life that you wouldn't make a mistake. There's nothing that you do in life that you wouldn't make a mistake. I don't care who you are. Every single person that has ever invested into the stock market or done anything in general, let's go away from finance, all right? Any single person that has ever started a YouTube channel, any single person that has ever, opened up a company, any single person that has started posting on TikTok, all these different things, at some point you have made a mistake. So running from a mistake is not an excuse not to do the thing. Running from a mistake is just a cell that keeps you in prison. You know, the fear of failure, the fear of, losing money, the fear of not being, you know, just the fear of not succeeding is a cage. Is a cage, and that boils back and that comes back to a scarcity way of thinking. A scarcity way of thinking. How do you think when it comes to finances? Right? So if that is an issue, then it has nothing to do with how much money you actually have, or it has nothing to do with how much knowledge you actually have, but it has everything to do with a scarcity thinking mentality. And that is actually the root of your issue. And other people, some of the mistakes that they make is, I will always have time. I will always have time. Now, that can be true in some cases, but the mistakes that a lot of people make is they use this ideology of I will always have time to push forward what you're supposed to do. It's like, you're supposed to, you know, take the dog out for a walk, and it's 7 a.m. And then you're just like, oh, I got time. And then you push it. Then it's 2 p.m. and you're like, oh, it's too hot outside. I'll go in the evening. I got time. Evening comes in, and then you're like, it's too late to go out. We'll just do it tomorrow. It's a cycle. So the moment you see and notice within yourself that you want to make a change, make the change, right? Make the change. So this is the part where you know you guys come in and ask questions. Does anyone have any questions in the chat? Does anyone have any other questions? If you asked a question and I was not able to answer it properly, let me know if you need elaborations on your questions. On your questions. We're 15 minutes into the live chat. We're 15 minutes into the live. 15 minutes into the live. Any questions? Any questions? Okay. No questions in the live chat. I prepare some questions. Prepare some questions. Um, one question that I one question that I often get from people is investing too risky? Is investing too risky? And to that question, I would say investing feels risky when you don't understand what you're doing. In life, life is just a constant cycle of risk. You're risking something to do the things that you're currently doing. You know, let's say you're a musician. You're risking the you're risking the stability of a regular 9 to 5 job to chase your passion for music. You're currently taking a risk, but you don't even know it. Let's say you're single, you're trying to talk to a girl, you're trying to ask this girl out. You're risking a no from that girl for a potential yes. So everything is a risk. When it comes to investing, investing is a risk, right? Um, Long-term investing, short-term investing, they're all risky. But now the good thing to note is when it comes to investing, we just don't go based off feelings, we go based off data. Now, using the S&P 500 as our benchmark, right? You could, if you want to know the S&P, what the S&P 500 is, just I said it before in the video, but you can Google it, after the live. So using the S&P 500 as our benchmark, if you notice, from the moment of inception, the moment that that index was created, up until our current day and time, the market has always gone up. And statistics show that anyone that has invested into the market over a 20-year period has never lost money. So understanding these statistics gives you kind of like it gives you a backbone for the potential of what could be and what could happen. So yes, are they risk involved? Yeah, there are risk involved. But now because you have this vision of the pros of the stock market, then you now realize that the risk, it's risky for me to invest in the stock market short term. Like if I want to make money, like putting a whole lot of money in there today and expecting to see a gain or a return tomorrow is risky. But if I'm putting it with the mindset of okay, 10 years, 20 years down the line, then the risk goes down. Why? The risk goes down because you now have knowledge, right? Which is super important. So knowledge is key. Things are risky because you do not understand them. And it's true for anything in life, not just personal finance, right? So, that being said, I'll open up the floor to questions one more time, and we will be ending the live. Any questions? Any questions? Any questions? Any questions? Oh, by the way, if you guys haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Any questions? Okay, no questions in the chat. No questions in the chat. Okay. That being said, I just want to thank every single person that stopped by to listen to this live. Shout out to Chris. Shout out to Mr. Jelly God. Shout out to Ryan. Shout out to Sharon. Shout out to Nasty. Shout out to Isaac. Shout out to Blake. Shout out to Sherry. Shout out to every single person that joined the live. And yeah, this video is going to be uploaded into the channel. So if there's anything that you missed, you can always revert back to the video. And if there are questions that you need answered, you can always put a comment in the video and I'll make sure I get back to them. That being said, this was an amazing session. I'll catch you guys in the next session. Peace out. Love you guys.